Fine.
So how is Eldoret? I guess must be very cold at this time.
No, it is very, very hot now.
So it is the opposite.
It is the opposite.
Oh, that's good.
Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you for logging in and being part of us this morning.
I should say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, brother. You've been lost from me.
Yeah, been on and off a little while, but I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes. We are, let me see, we are about 10, and if I remove the professors and the doctors around, so we are just about 7. Okay. I'm sure a number of us are still struggling to overcome sleep and come in. But as we wait for them, we can just try to hear from most of us here how we are progressing. And I want to just welcome my brother John. John, I'm aware of the situation you're going through, and you must be in the hospital. We are with you in prayer. We hope that all will be well. Maybe the other person I would like to hear from is Stephen. Stephen Mukasa, how are you? Okay. Stephen seems to be far from his gadget.
Hello, fine, and you?
I'm okay. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm okay.
How is
Morning,
this journey?
everyone. It is tough, but it's going on.
we have to we keep struggling. There is no any other. There's no shortcut.
Yes.
There's no shortcut. We just have to push on.
Okay.
James Mubangisi.
Yes, yes, Eras, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Yes, good morning, everybody on call.
So tell me, any progress so far? Anything new that you'd like to share with us?
Of course, we had a discussion the other day, and I don't have much to say right now, but I'm here just reading through the proposal and making some few changes to make it more smart.
Yeah, that is good. That's fine. Let me see from this brother of mine, Isaac Okalany Enyalu. Yes, Isaac. Isaac is far from his gadget. Yes?
Yes. I'm here by my gadget now.
So how are you?
Fine, thank you.
How is the going? Are the things moving well? Are we overcoming the battle, or it's getting even more fierce now?
We're just starting, and I would say we are progressing.
Okay. You know, in this journey here, people have decided to call it lonely. But for us, we have chosen to look for one another and try to work together. Otherwise, if you remain alone, it becomes very, very tiring.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but you're very welcome. Thank you for logging in. We are about to 16 people also. Maybe I can see Brother John Asinjire. I see your mic on. Why don't you greet us?
Oh, good morning, sir. And good morning, members on this call.
So how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. At what stage are we? Are we compiling the final thesis? Are we at the proposal data? Where are we?
I'm just starting. or I may say that I'm about to start.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yes, sir.
So you learn a lot of things here as you start. You have a number, and we are now at a stage where there are so many crucial things that they are teaching us, and I think you'll be able to have a solid start.
That will be great.
Yes. Maybe let me now hear from. I was looking for one sister at least. Whom do I see here? Petrolina. Good morning, Petrolina. Okay, she's far. Okay, colleagues, you will notice that in the last, I think, 2 or 3 meetings, we're looking at, actually in the main forum, we're looking at the aspect of philosophy, philosophy and theory, and specifically we're trying to look at how do we integrate theory, how do we integrate philosophy in our work, but specifically introducing this in our background. And then you'll notice that the presenter kept on warning us and told us that there is no space in your background where you're going to put a heading and call it now this area is for philosophy. So meaning that we will have to try as much as possible to understand, first of all, what philosophy is, and try to understand also what are these components that we need to know from philosophy, and then try to see how smartly can we integrate this, especially in the background. Of course, most of us we've known that philosophy, you begin to talk about it in your chapter 3, when you're now looking at your methodology. But now we are told that we must have this, begin from the background. And it's possible that we have had this in our background, and probably we did not know whether now we are actually talking about philosophy or introducing philosophy in our background. So the last 2 weeks have been a little bit tough, trying to learn how do you do this, how will even your reader notice that you have some bit of philosophy in the background. And so I have been wondering, even when we talk about introducing philosophy in the background, and we actually been taught on what to do, but now maybe just to try to get ourselves into understanding deeper maybe we needed to get some time and try to go deeper in understanding what philosophy is. And it's very interesting that there are a number of us here who are even, who have not even started and we are planning to start. You'll find that some of these things come in handy for you. Some of us probably started and gambled our way out, even without having an idea of what some of these things are. So it is, when they talk about philosophy, it is something that sounds abstract, something that's a little bit difficult to comprehend. But we try to read through and try to find what it is. So this morning, I just wanted us to discuss, just to borrow from what we learned last Sunday and the other Sunday, to try to kind of do some revision on what is this philosophy thing. When the presenter presented, it sounded very interesting, but after when I was left alone, I went back to try to figure out what he was talking about, and I almost got stuck again. I don't know if there's anybody who has such an experience like me. So I saw that today probably we try to go back and talk about what is this philosophy, and does it mean when we are talking about philosophy, are we talking about ontology? Are we talking about epistemology? What exactly are we talking about? So even maybe before I just play a very short clip that we have, this being the students forum, there is no correct and there is no wrong answer for now. And the good thing is that even if we mess it up, we have the seniors here with us. They can help us and rectify some of the errors that we can easily, make in this. So first, what is this philosophy thing? Of course, we had a dictionary definition at that time, but you could as well have your own understanding of what philosophy is. Under that, do we think that ontology and epistemology are things that form what we call philosophy, or there is something else beyond that? So I just want to open this flow for us to make some comments on what is on our screen right now. So to you, what is this big thing here? What is this philosophy thing? In simple terms, before we even talk about bringing it into the background, before we even talk about bringing it in our research work, in simple terms, when people are talking about this philosophy, is there any way you can help us understand the thing in simple terms? And I like the way my brother Jeremiah always puts it. Jeremiah, you are a philosopher. Can you throw in some light here in a simple way?
Good morning once again, everyone. Thank you, Elasu, for giving me the opportunity to make a little contribution. In the simplest term I can think of, philosophy is search of knowledge or search of wisdom. That is the simplest way I could put it.
Yeah. You see that somebody is making notes, somebody is writing. Can you try to come back again and sound it again?
In the simplest term I can think of, philosophy means search for knowledge or wisdom.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Jeremiah. I have a hand from Dennis. Please, Dennis, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. I think from I missed last week, but the other week I attended, and from what the presenter presented or shared, I want to think that when we talk about philosophy or integrating philosophy in your research, it basically means that in writing, there should be a sense of argumentative or some discussion. The way you discuss, the way you argue out your facts, it should be something that is appealing to the reader, and therefore by the reader looking at your arguments, he is attracted to read further because there is some interesting facts around your study that you're bringing out, or interesting arguments that you are bringing out, and that makes your research more interesting to read to the readers and anyone who comes across your proposal dissertation. That's what I thought.
Wow, wow. Thank you very much, Dennis. Now, Dennis,
Yes.
just to engage on this again, just a bit. The presenter said we have no space where we are going to write headings in our background, and then we now say, I am now introducing philosophy now. I'm now in philosophy. I've finished the first part. So, I mean, how do you help us?
What he mentioned, actually what I noted last time, he mentioned something like us being able to distinguish between literature narration and literature review. I'm getting some feedback in the background. Hello?
Out where the issue is there. I'm also getting the feedback. I don't know if you are in a place where there are many other people communicating, you could kindly.
No, there is someone, HP something is the one bringing noise. Someone has just joined. HP something.
Okay, it's mute now. You can now go on. Thank you.
Okay. He mentioned that we should be able to distinguish between literature narration and literature review. And what he basically meant was that it is possible that you can be doing research, you pick literature from here, pick literature from there, just dump it there. But it's possible that you can look at so-and-so's literature and then pick that set of literature and try to reason it out in the sense of your study. You borrow literature, but try to make that literature relevant to the study that you are doing by adding what I would call a fresh. And that, I think for me, is what I thought would be kind of bringing out the philosophical component. Not sure, but that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you very much, Dennis. As I said from the very beginning, that in this first 1 hour, we are students, so there's no wrong answer here and no correct answer here. But in the end, we have the doctors here. We have Professor James Kagari is already logged in. We have Dr. Austin. We have Professor Antai. So we are not worried. If there are any errors we are going to make, they'll be certainly rectified. Thank you very much. I wouldn't want to monopolize this with Dennis. I want to give other people opportunity to have a say on what philosophy is before you even think of integrating it, before you even think of bringing it to your background, then eventually to your methodology and so on. Do we have deep understanding of what this philosophy is? I noticed that it's very difficult. It's a big task to struggle to integrate what you don't understand into your work. So not until we understand this, it becomes very complicated integrating it into our work. So ladies and gentlemen, what is your say? I am trying to look through, I'm not seeing people putting up their hands. There are two things I draw from there. It's possible that we are handling something that people have, gone past some time back, but I see Scholastica. Kindly unmute and speak to us.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Yes.
It's correct that there could be some that we get lost regarding philosophy, and I'm glad that I'm on this platform, because when I heard last time that there's no specific space for philosophy in the background or in the proposal, that you bring it in intelligently and creatively. I was also wondering, because in some universities, like where I am, we are supposed to have a section for philosophical stance, looking at knowledge, realities. I mean, the reality you are going to talk about, some kind of value attached to the knowledge and methodology you are going to use. And so last time I was like challenged when they said there's no specific position for it. What I do understand is that it can spin through the research, as I'm beginning to understand. And interestingly, even when I was presenting my proposal to our department on Thursday, that's part of what I was asked. So then I think this forum can really clarify it to me. No position, but some universities are saying, what is your philosophical stance in your proposal? What do you understand about the realities in terms of what you're doing? And what value do you attach to your research? So those are some of the comments of the words I'm hearing, and those words are associated to philosophy. So I'm here to learn, but those are some of the realities I have about philosophy. And I also agree with somebody who said search for knowledge. But how is this knowledge integrated in the kind of research that I'm doing? That's where I am. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very, very much. If I can engage you a little bit, is that okay with you?
It's okay, please.
Thank you. Now, in the university where you are, where exactly do you put that subheading philosophical stand? Is it in the background? Is it where do you put that?
It's both in the background, and then when we're doing literature review, the first part of it is a philosophical review.
Okay.
I mean, yes, you begin with the literature. In the background, there's a philosophical orientation. And later, when we are doing literature, before you go to review of literature, you begin with a philosophical review. But of course, what I'm doing, when you come to the methodology, for instance, I'm using pragmatism, then when it comes to methodology, the mixed method that I'm doing is related to that pragmatic orientation that I stated in the background.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Another section of philosophical.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's why this forum, we appreciate the fact that we have people all over the world and from different universities, and people do things differently depending on what their university adopts. So thank you very much. And as you said, you're looking forward for this issue to be clarified. I was tempted to bring in one of the professors too, but I had not anticipated that kind of a question. So I wouldn't want to push anybody at this time.
Away from this home. You want daddy to chase me from this home.
Okay, maybe we can ask if most of us who are not communicating to maybe mute a bit. We are getting some feedback. Okay, thank you very much, Scholastica. You brought in a dimension that is very interesting. But I have a message from Dennis, and he says, what is written under philosophical stance or orientation? What is written in the philosophical stance or orientation? I don't know, Scholastica, whether you'd want to respond to that.
Yeah, I think the requirement is to explain the epistemological, ontological, and the axiological stances in terms of the kind of study someone is undertaking. Those are the explanations that are required. And of course, later in the literature, before the literature review, that is the philosophical review. Yeah, I think that is it. That is at that beginning. But later it will also be integrated with the theoretical review much later.
Oh, thank you very much. I see Renate Enid, your mic is on. Would you want to share with us something on the same? Okay. HP, your mic is also on. Patrick, your mic is also on.
Yeah, yes, Joseph.
Please share with us.
Yeah. Look.
Yes, we can hear you. Go right ahead. I hope we are not losing you. Should be having network challenges.
Look at philosophy, reality, and existence. In an art helps us or other integers.
Can you kindly try to repeat what you said. We lost you. Your network will not allow us hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was simply mentioning or expounding on what my sister said as the nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. And at the same time, it is a kind of a theory or attitude that acts as a guiding principle for behavior in simple terms. And also I was I echoed on what Jeremiah said. It is simply love of wisdom. That's my understanding.
Wow. So
Are you getting me?
yeah, we are getting you, Patrick.
Okay,
So
thank
that's very good. That's very good. So how do we bring in that love of wisdom? How do we integrate it in our work? Okay.
Hello?
Patrick, you have very good ideas in there, but your network is failing us from benefiting. Okay, my network was interfered with. Somebody was calling. I think people have the old link, and I'm seeing messages. People are telling me they are alone in the class. They have joined and they are alone.
Elazu, can I come back?
Please come back. Come back. You're allowed.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
About how to integrate philosophy in the PhD work or in the background, because this is where the presenter dwelt on. At least I attended 2 of the lectures, first on the 29th, 22nd, and the 29th of January. You know, philosophy has branches.
Okay.
There is ontology, which ties very in closely with metaphysics, and that concerns the nature of existence. It helps you bring out what exists, or what is it that exists. Then what epistemology, which is a theory of knowledge. Normally in this area of philosophy, the questions that often come up have got to do with how do you know what you claim to know, or how do you acquire the knowledge you have, things like that. Now, epistemology traditionally has had 2 orientations, wherein you can talk about knowledge as being innate, that is, you are born with it, or knowledge is acquired. You learn it through experience. Now, those 2 approaches to epistemology have shaped the thinking of scholars over the years. Then there is logic. Logic is about reason or reasoning. You can reason deductively, or you can reason inductively. Deductive reason relates to starting from general scenario and narrowing it down to specifics. Inductive reasoning begins from specific to generalities. And then we've got ethics or axiology. This has got to do with morals. And then we also have aesthetics, about beauty. Now, when I listened to the presenter on those 2 occasions, I seemed to have understood him to indicate that philosophy needs to come in the background by way, for example, of presenting your problem in such a way that you paint a reality that exists. if you belong to the quantitative fields of study, say for example economics, and you want to present your problem, you probably need to put it in such a way that you bring out that existence by way of telling us maybe the figures involved. You bring out that quantitative aspect instead of, for example, talking about so many people in Kampala are homeless. No, rather, instead of perhaps saying that homelessness is rampant in Kampala, you'd better tell that 100 people are homeless in Kampala. You are painting a reality using the figures so that ontology comes in your background in terms of the way you paint that picture. And then logic will run through the work because you do this systematically in a clever way, in such a way that you make it interesting. So that the way you sequence things so that they flow reflect the existence of philosophy in your work. And then, of course, you want to do your work in such a way that it is also beautiful. Nobody gets attracted to sketchily presented things. Then with regards to ethics or axiology, which relates to morality, as a researcher, you will have to adhere to certain basic ethical principles that also runs throughout your work. So there is perhaps nowhere where philosophy fails to be present in a PhD work. That's why I think it began by saying, where is philosophy in your doctor of philosophy? It must be exist both overtly and covertly. Covertly because you do not have to bring it out directly, but we want to see it there. And overtly, when you come to the section where it is required that you present a philosophical standpoint. And where that section comes now relates to epistemology. You have to indicate the epistemological stance that your work has taken. Is knowledge acquired? Is it empirical? Or is knowledge innate? Are people born with it? That's what I would say now, colleagues. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Jeremiah. You touched so many things that are very interesting. And so before I let you go, Jeremiah. Yes, you mentioned something about reality.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that one of the things that the presenter built on last time was about reality. So which of these two terms here can we associate so much with the reality? Is it ontology, epistemology?
Ontology.
Very good. Okay.
It's about what exists.
What exists?
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Jeremiah. I don't know whether Scholastica is still with us.
Yes, I am.
And thank you very much. I am very sure that you're picking a few of the things that our colleagues are sharing in here. But of course,
yes.
I have seen professors that are here. I've seen at least 3 professors right now, and I might interest them to help us before we close the session.
I do understand. If you can allow
mm,
me comment, excuse me.
yes, go
Yeah,
on.
I think now it's becoming clear, especially when the previous speaker said that it has got these two aspects of presenting itself overtly and covertly. And what helps me now, what gives me some kind of confidence in what I'm doing is that or covertly, or you can see it actually. There's a small section that he talked about, and then it also runs through indirectly. And so I'm now comfortable because now it relates to what I'm doing.
Thank
So
you
I'm
very
glad
much.
to be on this platform because I was a bit confused and it's now coming out clear for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jeremiah. Jeremiah, are you still with us? Okay. You know, we in a PhD study, we don't take terms lightly. Some few minutes ago, I was engaging one of the students here who he says is about to start. And now we are talking about this word covertly. Would you want to, I don't know, Jeremiah or Scholastica, would you want to explain what this, I for one, I don't know. And there are also other people here that are just starting the journey, and I'm already seeing direct messages here. Well, now what is covertly? I'm throwing it back. Scholastica and then Jeremiah, would you save me? I've seen 4 messages here asking me to explain what covertly and what is the other term Jeremiah knows. Can somebody help us here?
What I understand, well, I stand to be corrected. Overt means something that is, according to me, maybe I hope I'm not confusing the terms. Overt is something that is, you can see and it's not hidden. But
Okay.
covert is hidden, about hidden, cannot be seen properly. I mean, like concretely, but it's like something a bit hidden, a bit okay, I will not use another term. So that's what I understand. So in my case, what I would think is that overt experience is where they are saying, put that section of ontological stance or orientation, then it is put there. But covert is that a philosophy will spin through almost all the sections up to chapter 3 of my research.
Wow.
And that's what I understood, because if I might give you an example, at the beginning where I was told to put a philosophical stance, I put pragmatism that is going to underpin my study and what it's all about in terms of ontology, epistemology, and axiology. But then when I went down into like chapter 3, I was talking about mixed method, even into like when we're talking about the design, having the approaches, having quantitative and qualitative. That's part of what was stated in my philosophical stance, because now they begin to unfold as I go through, as I write my research proposal. So
okay.
that's my understanding.
Okay,
If I have interchanged them,
it's
I
okay.
stand to be corrected.
It's okay. Thank you very much. I will now ask my friends here who are asking for somebody saying those 3 terms are very abstract. He's saying philosophy, ontology, and epistemology are very, very abstract terms to him. And now I have philosophers here. Now I would want to ask these friends of mine, in addition to reading more, you can also get some hints from Jeremiah. You can also get some hints from Scholastica. So at India, before we close this, I might interest one of the professors to throw some light on this. But for now, we can continue. And I think we have already talked about this. We have talked about reality. So how do we bring in this philosophy in the background? And people have told you, and they've told us about how philosophy must be spinning through all your work. Philosophy must be there. If at all you can remember, is you are doing a doctor of philosophy. So if there is no philosophy in your work, then it is impossible that you're doing something else. And of course, if you look at this, we're asking ourselves, is it now to us, can we now say that ontology plus epistemology can result to philosophy, or there's something else which is missing in there? But as we try to figure out where we can look at this short clip, and then we'll make some comments if time allows. So welcome with me to this small short clip.
Epistemology. Let me explain all these concepts one by one, but before that, we should understand ontology and epistemology shape your research philosophy. So the research philosophy is mainly dependent on these two components. So that's why it is important for us to understand each of these concepts. Let us start with understanding ontology. So ontology is basically answering the questions, what is reality and what shapes the reality? It tells you about the knowledge and what is happening there. Or for example, if you are planning to solve any situation or any problem, it will give you idea of that what is that problem and what are the possible solutions to that problem. Ontology gives you three basic answers. Three questions that lead to the ontology is what is reality or knowledge, what shapes that knowledge, or what are the events that shape that knowledge or that reality, and what is the relationship between each of these components which shapes the reality or form the knowledge for you. So that is the basic of ontology. Ontology we can understand based on these three concepts. But to make it very simple, ontology is telling us about what is reality. Now, there are many beliefs available for the ontology, but here to make this video very easy, I am taking only three beliefs or three major beliefs of ontology. That is, the first belief is that there is only one reality. It is called singularity. Means that there is only one universal set of solution to any problem. There is only one universal truth. There is only one reality for a specific situation or specific problem. And this reality exists without how people or how perceiver they perceive this reality. Okay, so it is called the concept of singularity. There is only one solution or one reality. Okay, now the second concept is there are more than one reality. There are many realities, and there may be possibilities, multiple realities or multiple truths are there. That is not independent of perceiver. It depends on how people they perceive the truth or the reality or the knowledge. It depends largely on the people who are shaping that reality or creating that truth. Okay. Now, this is the second belief, and the third belief is there are one or maybe many reality. So there both possibilities are there. Okay, so this is the third famous concept of ontology. So keep in mind these three concepts. So we'll use them to form our research philosophy. Okay. Now the first concept is that there is only one reality. The second concept is the realities are more than one. There is more than one realities, and it is not independent of perceiver. And finally, there is a belief that there is a one or maybe many realities exist. Okay. Now this is ontological belief. Let's move to the second concept, which maybe we should understand very clearly or more clearly. It is epistemology. Now, epistemology tells you about how we receive knowledge, how do we know about truth, how do we know about reality. It means that it tells us how we receive or how we collect knowledge. Okay, so this is epistemology. Similarly, like ontology, there are a lot of beliefs or ontological beliefs are available in the research or in the philosophy. But here in this video, to make it very simple, I'm just taking only three beliefs of the only three famous beliefs of epistemology. The first belief is that the knowledge can be measured, and it can be measured using any reliable tools and techniques. So there is a measurability in the truth or in the knowledge. That is the first belief. There is another belief that knowledge can be interpreted. It is not measurable, so you have to interpret it. That is the second belief of epistemology. So we can receive knowledge or we can collect knowledge by interpreting any situation or any truth or any reality. Okay. Now the third belief is that the truth can be measurable or knowledge can be measurable, or at the same time it can be explained or it can be interpreted. So this is the third belief or epistemological stance we are studying in this video. Okay. Now let's see how these concepts they shape your research philosophy or the approach you are using in your thesis or in your final year project or in your any research you are planning to perform. Okay. Now, for example, in this equation, you can see ontological beliefs and epistemological beliefs, they shape your research philosophy. Here I'm taking the first belief, that the belief, ontological belief, is that there is only one reality and it can be measurable. So if we are using these two concepts, the philosophical approach we are going to see would be the positivism. So we are using positivism, and the positivism believes that there is one solution to a particular problem and it can be measurable. The knowledge is one, the reality is one, the truth is one, and it is measurable with the help of tools and techniques we can apply. So it depends on more quantitatively measuring the different beliefs and the knowledge. So knowledge is measurable. There is only one reality available and we can measure it using reliable tools and techniques. So this is positivism. Now let's see the second ontological belief, that is very simple. The truths are many. The realities are not only one, they are many, and it can be interpreted. It is not measurable, but rather than measuring them, we can interpret them and or explain them. So the interpretation and measurability with the help of this epistemological approach and the ontological approach is that there are multiple realities. We see this is constructivism. So in the constructivism, we consider that there are many realities and they can be interpreted or explained. So this is a philosophical approach where we mostly use our qualitative research. And then we have the third belief, the belief that the reality can be one and many, and the epistemological approach that it can be examined or it can be interpreted. Means that it can be measured or it can be interpreted. Both options are available, but we can use whatever the best tool available for the situation, and that is epistemological approach. And in that case, we are using a pragmatism approach. So pragmatic approach or pragmatism research philosophy deals with the situation where ontological belief is that the reality can be one and many, and it can be, the knowledge can be measured and also it can be interpreted. So this is pragmatism in terms of research philosophy. These are the three major approaches of research methodology. So let's just conclude these, how these three different techniques or different philosophies are being formed from epistemological and ontological beliefs. But here I want to mention that when we are starting our research, it is very important for us to understand what is our stance, whether we are going for positivism, whether we are going for constructivism, or we are going for pragmatism, means that we are going for quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method or multi-method research. Okay. Now let's just conclude what we learned from this video in this situation. Ontological stance is basically depending on the three major beliefs that I use in this video, the singular reality, multiple reality, and singular or multiple realities. Okay, and then epistemological beliefs I use, it can be measured, the knowledge can be measured using sophisticated tools or scientific rules. And then epistemological stance is that the second epistemological stance is that reality can be interpreted. It is not measurable, instead it is interpretable. And finally, the third is basically we can use either measurement or we can interpret the reality, whatever best fit in the situation we are in, we can use all this. Okay, so this is how we form different research philosophies. The positivism is based on ontological stance of singularity, means that there is only one truth and it can be, the knowledge can be measured. So we are using tools to measure that, that is positivism. And in second, we conclude the constructivism as an approach where we believe that there are multiple realities and the truth or the knowledge needs to be interpreted. And finally, we have pragmatism, which believes that ontological approach is where the reality is singular or it can be multiple, and we can use any available tool to measure it or we can interpret it. That is called pragmatism. So I hope so you understand these concepts. What you need to do is in the comment box, you have to mention that what is your approach in your research, finally a project, thesis, or in your research article. I hope so this video will be useful for you to understand the research philosophies. Thank you very much and have a very nice day.
Wow. So welcome back from this short video, and I really want to hope that somehow it relates to what we have been talking about. I would like to again thank you very much for your contributions, and I must say that we seem to have run out of time, but
terminology.
Let's unpack
Okay, we had two clips that I thought we'd be able to look through, but time cannot allow us to go beyond that. But probably I want to hope that these are the things that we wanted to try to understand by the end of the 1 hour that's allocated to us today. Number one, we wanted to try to be able to understand the key components of philosophy, of course, in addition to understanding what philosophy itself is, but also our objective number two was to try to be able to integrate the knowledge and understanding of the basic philosophical components in our work. And I want to say that in our discussion, we seem to have answered these two objectives that we set out to answer today. Time cannot allow us to go beyond this, but I had some two other questions that I think will be trying to discuss next week, next Sunday. I want to thank you very, very much for your contribution, and more importantly, defying sleep at this time, and be part of this session. Thank you very, very much. I want to really say thank you to our professors who I don't know how to say it, but thank you. Thank you, because this knowledge, somebody should have paid tuition to be able to learn this, but we are learning from you for free. So thank you very much. Our doctors, Dr. Austin, thank you very much. Dr. Goretti, thank you very much for joining us this morning in the Students' Forum. Dr. Ahmad, thank you very much. And the rest of my colleagues, the students, thank you so much. And I pray that we will continue to engage with one another over the week on the same. I would also be expecting some comments and questions from you over the week, so that we are able to prepare some work which is addressing the concerns that you have. We wouldn't want to come here and talk about things that we think you want. We want to talk about things that address the concerns that you have, and that makes more sense than coming here to talk about what we think is what you want to hear. So thank you very much. I want to, my apologies, we've gone beyond our time by 3 minutes. And right about now, allow me to hand over the mic to Dr. Ahmad, then maybe later. I don't know whether he's moderating. Doctor, are you on? Okay. Dr. Ahmad Walgembe. I'd like to hand this to you. I don't know whether your network can allow you to speak to us. Doctor, you're speaking, but we can't hear.
Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, Doctor.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Members, thank you very much. You're welcome to our session. We really appreciate Joseph and the entire team for the job that they have done well, extremely well. Their contribution to what we are doing at the moment. We have moved a long way in a number of discussions, and in the previous 2 weeks, we've been trying to discuss how to write a good background in different areas or in different ways. And among them, we had the components of writing background, integrating theory, integrating philosophy in the background. So we appreciate the contributions of members who have been doing this work, and we're going to be really trying to wind up in this discussion. Before we go into that, allow me to really appreciate the students, all of the senior colleagues who have been able to join the platform over time. Allow me also update colleagues who are new in the platform that there's critical search for community development is a CSR, largely a CSR-based platform that enables students to pick something, learn something, and improve themselves. It has students in a number of universities, not only those in Uganda, but more specifically those in Uganda. We appreciate all of them for always being part of the platform. Those who come from different universities abroad, universities in Kenya, in Tanzania, South Africa, North Africa, universities in Asia, all of them, we appreciate their commitment and their ability to always join us every Sunday. Over time, we have discussed a number of pertinent issues, and all of these are for the benefit of the students. For senior colleagues on the platform this morning, specifically, and thank you very well, Professor Michael Koche, we appreciate you. Today we are going to have discussions. You're going to lead them, and you have been my key. I've worked with you for quite some time on the moderatorship. Dr. Austin Mwanje, welcome. Dr. Gordy Chene, you have done a great job over time. Mr. Gideon, Dr. Gideon Nkuruziza, our own Professor Rola Orobia, and senior student Joseph Charles Olupot Bernard. We appreciate you for the contribution that you have made over time. So today's discussion is moving towards concluding, and we assume as a must that it's going to be led by the students, because it's a review of what we have been discussing previously. We agreed that we have a series of discussions, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5. Those series of discussions must be concluded by the students, so that the students can ably bring out and tell us what they have learned from these different discussions. And these discussions are going to be led by, as I earlier mentioned, our senior colleague, Professor Michael Koche. Professor Michael Koche is the Dean Faculty of Graduate Studies, or School of Graduate Studies at Uganda, Uganda Technology and Management University. And also Nkozi University has given a lot of support in that regard. So we believe that over time, Temi has been here with us. He has really guided the students in a number of issues. Allow me to invite him to introduce the discussion and the session, and then we can see how to proceed. Professor Michael, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hamad, for giving me this opportunity to facilitate the process of us discussing. I want to begin by appreciating Professor Joseph Ntai for this platform and the strength which the platform has been able to grow by allowing all of us to be able to make a contribution And especially for people who have been able to attend as many sessions as possible, you can see that there's a lot of incremental learning. There is a lot of growing in depth with most of the concepts. I also want to appreciate especially the senior colleagues for the support and allowing themselves to be able to share their knowledge and be able to shape perspectives. And then I also want to appreciate the students and everyone. So without wasting time, I must begin by acknowledging that the early morning session has strengthened the purpose for which we feel that we should achieve today. So I believe that most of the discussions which were conducted in the morning, at the first session, will be able to be carried forward in the subsequent discussion. Now, like our moderators highlighted, we really want to see that we concretize our understanding about critical concepts which were presented by Dr. Dennis Musinguzi, which actually was really well done. All of us appreciate that the sessions extensive dealt with issues of background, highlighted issues of philosophy, and then now also gave us insights on how we can skillfully integrate philosophy into the background. But also one thing you'll remember is that as the discussion was almost closing, many other critical concepts came up, and especially arising from the presentation, especially about inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, and then eventually somebody brought about abductive reasoning. So today, I think we shall try to make sure that because the good thing, most of us were participants in the previous sessions, and I believe also we have been interacting with aspects of philosophy, aspects of the background. Many times, this is not the first time philosophy has been talked in this platform, and also the issues of background. We have had different scholars come into the platform and present about background, and also we have had even the students' presentations presenting their backgrounds and then the comments. So this morning, I think we shall go through a process of making sure that we discuss this in group discussions. So we prepared some questions collaboratively, which we believe that should be able to guide us in the process of conducting our discussion this morning. And I believe that our moderator will be able to help us to break us into breakout sessions. So the first group, we believe that will help us to integrate the critical concepts about background, and which actually, again, in line with what Dr. Dennis presented. The first session, of course, the first group will take us through what are the elements that make a good background, and what are the most common and appropriate ways of integrating theory in the background. And I think for most of us who attended the first presentation, Dr. Dennis largely dealt with the aspects of the background. And then the second group will deal with issues, what constitutes philosophy, and also we can really remember that that's what was also discussed in the earlier session, and then the major philosophical orientations. Then group 3 will largely deal with what are the main ways of integrating philosophy in the background, and what are the main ways of integrating philosophy in your thesis. And for some of you who attended the early morning session, you had, I think, two participants clearly highlighted their stand. Some, of course, some universities will tell you that you must present a philosophical stand, and then for some across the thesis, I think chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and then another one just chapter 3. But we shall be that group will look at that. Then we shall now extend the group 4. We'll talk about what constitutes inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning, and to what extent does each align to the different philosophical orientations. So those will be the major questions and major groups. So we shall break out for something like 20-30 minutes, and then we come back, and each group will do a presentation. After the presentation, and then we all be able to discuss. So, and then at the end of the senior colleagues will give their views about what the discussions have been. So I think Dr. Dennis, I could break out into breakout sessions, and then we see how we'll proceed. Dr. Hamad, is it possible for you to break us into breakout?
Dr. Michael, we are handling that shortly on the issue of breakout rooms. I don't know whether we admin, the main host is trying to, we are handling that. Just to give us a few minutes.
Hello. Dr. Ahmad, I was not getting you quite well.
Yes, I was saying that we are handling that shortly. You can possibly continue as we handle that in a few minutes.
Okay.
I would request that our main host can respond to our main hosts at the desk of Socratic. Check your main WhatsApp. We need to enable the waiting room icon. Main host, please.
Hello.
Professor Michael, I would propose that you continue as I handle this. I'm handling contact the main host. Professor Michael.
Okay. Okay.
You can possibly give some highlights as I contact the main host.
Okay. I think members, as we are trying to to sort out that issue of breaking us into rooms, because we really believe that when we're in different groups, we have an opportunity of going deeper in the different concepts and eventually be able to integrate our thinking about how to integrate philosophy into our backgrounds, and then eventually how to integrate into our thesis. And then as we do that, we are sound. Our orientation philosophically is sound without contradictions. And also, I think the major challenge most times, especially from the beginning of the presentation, Dr. Dennis highlighted the many misconceptions about philosophy. And of course, as a result of misconceptions, most times it becomes challenging for you even to integrate your philosophy into the background. Maybe let me highlight some of the issues for some members who, as we wait for. So on the 15th, I think Dr. Dennis critically dealt with issues of misconceptions about philosophy. Where is philosophy in the PhD? How can we be able to see that the thesis which you are carrying or which you have written critically captures the aspects of philosophy, and also dealt with the aspects, what the importance of philosophy, and then now narrowed it down to philosophy and the background of the study. And a lot of discussions we really handled, and as you can see, there are also issues about, should we have a section within the background where we clearly reflect, where we clearly bring out that this is our philosophical stand. And I think this morning, we heard from one of the participants that actually in her university, they put a philosophical stand in chapter 1, and then chapter 2, and then chapter 3. And then to others, they put it in chapter 3. But of course, one of the issues, what constitutes a philosophical stand? And I think the clip which was shared by Elas also tried to bring out the different philosophical stands which you could be able to take, and then also how you can clearly articulate them. I don't know, Dr. Ahmad, is it challenging for us to go through that process, or we go to a plenary where we members just discuss each of these questions together, or we can be able to do with the breakout rooms?
Professor, we have got a few challenges that are delaying us on this.
Yes.
I would propose that we can have a general discussion for the beginning, and in case it works out, we shall go into the groupings. But you can have a general discussion maybe on question 1 for the meantime.
Okay, thank you. So I think members, let me put these questions here such that we can be able to give our views about each of these. Of course, largely the presentation which was the presentations which we have been carrying out tried as much as possible to cover these and subsequently, but we feel that as we eventually conclude on these matters, we could try to. So I want to invite the students to make comments on the first question. What are the elements that make a good background? and what are the critical issues which must come clearly in those sections. Yes. Maybe let me throw this first to Joseph. Joseph Elasu. Okay, I can see Andrew Semakula's mic is unmuted. Yes. Joseph Elasu. Yes, I can see hands raised up. You can unmute your mic and
Yes, good
John.
morning, Pro.
Morning.
Yeah, morning. Morning, colleagues. Yeah, I think a good background should have from the beginning uh, the motivation of the study, the gap connected to the variables, as well as the theory. That means we should have something like theoretical gap, maybe theoretical gap, maybe methodological gap, and the motivation of the study, in my own view. And this should be also connected to the philosophy, in brief.
Okay. Now, thank you so much. Any other comment about the background?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Prof and team. Peter Masawa, right here.
Yes.
Prof, with regard to the guidance, earlier guidance of Dr. Msinguzi, it was quite clear that the three perspectives of the theory, the historical, and the contextual values should be clear. The three should be covered. And in this, we ought to have the two variables, the dependent and the independent, linked in a historical and contextual manner, and they should be clearly spelled out. Therefore, there should be that internal coherence of those two variables historically, and it should be visible that the three context, history, and the theory moving clearly can be visibly seen by those that are the background being shown to. Thank you very much, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I can give a chance to Peace and then Scholastica.
Yes, morning. I'm sorry for the noise of the dogs. In reference to Dr. Msinguzi's presentation, a background has three levels. You look at the context, what is happening around, and you look at the concept comprising of the variables under study, and you end up with the gap. The gap, what are you going to contribute in reference to the gaps that you are seeing in literature? Over to you, Prof. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Scholastica.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree with my colleagues. They have explained. We are talking about the three, but I'm sorry, I keep on referring to also what we are doing. They seem to be four: historical perspective, kind of background in terms of where especially the dependent variable originated from some kind of history to bring it to the level of the country in which one is residing, and making sure that all the four historical, theoretical, conceptual, and contextual perspectives are linked to one another. Thank you. That's what I can add.
Okay. Thank you. I think critically we have come up with the four perspectives. And I know especially when we go into philosophy, sometimes divergences in perspectives come. And I think it's very important for us, but let us reflect also on philosophy, then we go now dealing with the issues of integration. Maybe quickly, we could also reflect on the second question, that is philosophy. What constitutes philosophy? What constitutes, and I think that's the question also we asked in the early morning session, what is really philosophy? When do we say that? When do we say that this is philosophy? When do you see that this is philosophy? What constitutes philosophy? Hello? Yes, please. You can unmute your mic. I've seen you raised your. What constitutes philosophy? Yes, please. You can just unmute your mic and. Yes, please again.
Yes, to me, philosophy is all about the critical thinking and having that deeper reflection on the reality and the problem under study. What is the reality there, and what is that what do other people say in reference to the deeper reflection about what you are studying? Thank you so much. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Scholastica, I want to invite you because there are some very paramount issues you highlighted, how you write the philosophical. Yes. I think let me give to Jeremiah. Jeremiah, please, before I invite Scholastica.
Thank you very much, Professor. In my view, what constitutes philosophy has got to do with the originality of thought in the way that your work is presented, to the extent that you bring out very skillfully the reality that you are studying and place it within epistemological context with a logical flow. And of course, within the work, you must also adhere to the necessary ethics or morals that research work demands on you. And you present your work as beautifully as possible, in which case you paint aesthetic pictures of the work. So all that would constitute philosophy in your Doctor of Philosophy work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think that there was some discussion on that. How do you paint out your work? Maybe before I go to Scholastica, how can you, in the background, how can you paint out your work, being able to highlight those different stands you are talking about, the reality, the epistemology, and then the ethical issues?
Thank you once more. painting your work, first of all, from ontological point of view, which in a way overlaps with epistemology. There isn't, there is a very thin line. You bring out the reality that you believe exists. Now, that reality would constitute the key tenets of the problem that you are studying, so that it is clearly seen that you have a problem. Once you do that, logic comes in the way you sequence or
Hello, like we have lost him. Like we lost.
The arguments and the
Yes,
bound those
Jeremiah, we lost.
would be, you know, sorry, I was saying
Yes, yes.
that once you bring out the problem in a logical way with very neat originality of thought,
Looks like his network is not very, very good. Okay, I think Jeremiah will come back, and Scholastica, you come again and highlight the issues of philosophical stand. How do you do it in your university?
Professor,
Yes, yes.
I wanted to request that the host maybe is not reading my messages to give Charles Rupert admin rights. The main host, please give Charles Rupert admin rights.
So how do we do? Have you got in touch with the main host?
I think by mentioning here, he can be able to respond. He doesn't respond to private messages.
Oh. Okay, main host, please help us with admin rights so that we could break out in the sessions. Okay, as that is being worked out, let us go into Scholastica. I was basically asking you to highlight how you put your philosophical stance according to your university. What you earlier on iterated.
Yeah, the main part where it is overtly articulated is in the background, where we put a section of philosophical stance, and we articulate how we are going to measure the knowledge, depending on someone's ontological, orientation according to the study. For instance, talking about the philosophical stance generally, like as I talked about it, I said, if I stated I'm going to use pragmatism, and then we state all that's about pragmatism, that it believes in one or many realities, and that then it allows use of many methods, mixed methods. So when it comes to to the chapter 3, then we expound on those approaches that are related to pragmatism, approaches for pragmatism, which will be quantitative and qualitative. And of course, in terms of knowledge can be measured. We articulate the tools that we're going to use for the quantitative, and then we also explain how the qualitative aspect is going to come out, bringing up the mixed method approach. But overtly is stated in the background, but covertly it spins through chapter 3 to explain all those aspects related to pragmatism, but not always stating it as pragmatism. They unfold because they have already been stated in the background. That's what I can say.
Thank you. Members, can we, in view of what about other universities' perspectives? How do you reflect philosophy in terms of aligning your background? Of course, our presenter highlighted that, yes, you can be able to point out some issues, but in some instances, as you read the background, you can be able to see the philosophical stand of the person. So, can we get more comments in terms of philosophy? How do we put the anxiological beliefs? Yes, members. In view of philosophy, how do we critically reflect the aspects of philosophy in our background? Yes. Scholastic again.
You are talking about axiological beliefs. What I came to understand is to do with the ethics also, and some kind of beauty. So I think according to me, each strand of philosophy, and maybe in the methodology, it has got its own ethics. For instance, if we talk about pragmatism, there's this issue of bias because if there's one stand of one reality, then there shouldn't be any bias. We use authentic tools, but if it's mixed, there's that aspect of bringing in some kind of bias, the researchers' ideas coming in, but it is stated that with pragmatism, it's that bias that can allow a researcher to come to the objectives, to achieve the objectives of the study without putting in his or her own ideas so much. So they say the necessary bias. And of course, there are so many ethics related to whatever we are going to do as far as research is concerned, not going overboard, following the guidelines. That's an ethical thing. And it is also cutting through, even when we look at the privacy in research and data collection, not that is confidentiality is part of that. According to me, it is coming up as part of anxiology, because there are those ethical things as we do the research, and it's not stated as anxiology or philosophy, but those ethical things that cut through, according to me, to my understanding, are related to anxiology.
Okay,
I submit.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, one interesting thing I found about your presentation, what you highlighted, you highlighted how you put a stand, and then you highlight it in the background. And then when you come to literature review, you extensively discuss what philosophy is all about. And then when you go to chapter 3, again, you talk now about epistemologically how you position yourself, then methodologically how you align yourself. And I think I've seen some universities who do it differently, but still doing the same, whereby a student is expected to first demonstrate understanding of what philosophy is all about, the different philosophical standpoints which are in existence, when they are applicable. And then now next, the student goes into the process of defining his philosophical stand in view of his the phenomenon he's studying. And at the end of it all, then a student is expected now to demonstrate, to justify that the philosophical stand is taken clearly mirrors to the realities which are there. Of course, by critically identifying that ontologically, the realities, like if you are saying that your stand is positivism, you clearly demonstrate that the realities of the phenomenon are positivistic in nature and vice versa. And I find that very interesting that for your university even helps a student by clearly, first of all, identifying your philosophical orientation in chapter. And then also when you go to chapter 2, you go through a review, because sometimes the challenge which most all of us will have, if you don't clearly understand the different philosophical orientations which are there, what informs each of them, what is the strength, what grounds them. So I think in a way I found it very interesting. That's why I think what your university does. So in a way, because now you go through the process of critically reviewing the philosophical orientations, then you go again and also review the theory, and the phenomenon literature review. Then in chapter 3, you now integrate, basically actually so I think it gives you an opportunity of appropriately being able to reflect, because sometimes also if you don't clearly understand the philosophical orientation, then the philosophical beliefs. And also the other thing which I find very interesting, and I really want us to maybe reflect on this carefully, in terms of anxiology. And sometimes you find that most times people basically, what they do is point out their philosophical stand, and that is the end, without properly giving the justification. Like, what is the strength of positivism? Positivism believes that there is one reality. What is the strength of interpretivism? Interpretivism believes that there are multiple realities. So now, if you have said that you have taken a positivistic stand, so you must be able, at the point of justification, to clearly demonstrate that the realities which you are facing is one. There's one reality, and this is it anyway. One thing also you clearly see now the debates at the point of PhD now would be really whether somebody has taken a sound philosophical stand. Now, whereby now we really examine that. Honestly, is this reality you are saying one, but there are multiple realities in this, and then those would be the debates. And then, so I think in a way, it facilitates the process of you creating knowledge, which is because now you are able to position really the study into examining the nature of reality which you are looking at. And then also being able to define the proper means and mechanism of really getting to the realities which you'll be now examining. Then now using the appropriate methods, but also following the right ethics. And like you rightfully said, and I think those should be, I would also want us to discuss more. And of course, also, maybe the other thing, which I find much appropriate. When the university provides somebody to clearly stipulate their philosophical stand and then document their philosophical orientation, it helps the student to clear in his mind how he should go about his study. it gives you, but of course, I know like even in most universities, you may not be able really to articulate the philosophy in which you are standing, but you can be able to see it as a reflection in a way. But most times that has a falsehood because it doesn't help you to really navigate through, because now if you go through the process of reflecting carefully, which values, processes, which ethics am I going to face? Like now we are talking about pragmatism. Now, if you are talking about pragmatism, where you are looking at both the positive, single reality and multiple realities. Now, it helps you in the process now when you are now conducting your studies. For this aspect of my study, I will strongly be following this angelological beliefs. And for the other bit, so I think I don't know, but I would want us to discuss along some of those issues. I don't know whether anybody has any comment in view of that. I want to acknowledge Dr. Dennis is around. Dr. Dennis, we are trying to reflect on the presentation you made, and even the first session, try to reflect carefully, because you believe that as we conclude this, we should be able to integrate the facets of knowledge, because a lot of issues you really raise up, a lot of issues which are very critical. And I think so far so good. I don't know whether anybody has any comment, but we're now on philosophy. Now, maybe the other issue I also want us to discuss. Now, given the fact that positivists strongly believe that there's one reality, and interpretivists believe that there are multiple reality. Now, when you come to like I think Dr. Dennis also highlighted that last time, that he found people discussing, and they're talking about the dependent and independent variable, and the clarity of concepts, which comes with positive, because you already know the reality which is there. So to what extent will you find that the background, which for a study which has taken a positivist perspective and a study, may vary? I want to invite senior colleagues and everyone in the platform. What could be the critical differences between a study which has taken a positivist orientation in comparison to a study which has taken an interpretivist perspective? Yes, senior colleagues and members in the call, it's unfortunate that though we plan to have breakout session, we can't be able to get the host, so we have to innovatively maneuver through to make sure that we try as much as possible through the plenary to reflect further on the issues which was presented by our senior colleague, Dr. Dennis Musinguze. Yes, members in the morning call. What could be the standout glaring difference? Because someone has taken a stand as and as an interpretivist. Yes, maybe Dr. Dennis, can I indulge a bit? Dr. Dennis?
Yes, Prof. Hello?
Okay, yes, please.
I would imagine that positivism, just like you have just said, that there's a single reality that exists out there. However, it can be measured objectively, whereas interpretism can be measured subjectively.
Yes, we agree. Yes, Jeremiah?
Thank you very much. I want to pick it from where Doctor has left it. When reality is one, and you have taken the positivist approach, then you go quantitative. in terms of the way you carry out your research. On the other hand, if reality is to be interpreted, then you have to go qualitative, in which case you have to bring out the views qualitatively.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Scholastica.
I think in my simple terms, bringing it nearer to me to understand, when it's one reality and we're going quantitatively, then we are using lots of figures. You'll find a lots of evidence in figures to explain the quantitative part. And when we are saying that the reality, there are multiple realities and we're going qualitatively, then we are going to use lots of words to explain, to talk about the phenomena, to make sure that the words and stories explain what you are going into, bringing it closer to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Yes, truly, we know that positivism very strong in aspects of quantitative, really, because that's actually because of positivism. So you'll find that the methodological now belief or assumption basically quantitative, and then vice versa. But now, of course, now you are faced with, yes, Joseph?
Thank you very much, Professor. We have seen situations where positivists can as well conduct qualitative research, and especially if the realities we are searching for can then be summarized using non-statistical means or tools. And in the end, we could be able to ascertain certain causal relations and between different elements, and then the realities can be summarized, and then we can identify different patterns that we can report. So I want to think that whereas the positivists are really very strong in quantitative research, I also believe that there are instances where positivists can also be qualitative in nature. That's just what I wanted to share. Those are my thoughts, and okay, maybe somebody else can be able to disagree with that. Over to you, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Yes, Gordon.
And thank you, colleagues. It most had a voice on how you can tell that someone is taking a positivist or the constructive approach right from the background. Actually, in most researches, you'll be able to tell why. You'll be able to tell why. You'll be able to tell whether someone is taking an objective or a constructive approach. Why? With the backgrounds that are written, taking an objective approach, you always find out that researchers are basing on a single or singular reality, where if maybe the phenomena understudy or the variable understudy, let maybe it the performance. They all agree to a certain metrics of measuring performance in that case. And they all point to a single problem. And when also relating maybe the IV, that I may just assume, maybe in this case, could be how teachers' motivation is influencing performance. You'll find out they all point to the same direction. But when it comes to to constructive approach, you'll find out that the reality also is multiple, or there are many realities. As much as maybe other authors are saying that enhancing teachers' salaries will improve their performance, will enhance their performance. Others are saying, no, it is not only the salaries that could enhance teachers' performance, meaning there's quite multiple realities, right from the debate that had been created in the background. And that will move throughout. We'll move from the background section, literature section, even to the methodology section. That's how you can actually be able to differentiate between those, between the objective approach and the constructive approach, right from the background and how the researcher is presenting the ideas. Okay, thank you, Prof. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Michael.
Thank you so much, Professor and my colleagues. In case we are working with positivism, I do expect to have predictors of the dependent variable explicit in the background. And if we are working with the constructivism, I do expect no predictors, because in this case, we are exploring to know the predictors. So that is the difference I see. To find the predictors, if it is positivism and if it is constructivism, we might not find possible predictors of the dependent variable. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you so much for that addition. Very, very critical. And actually, when you look at the debates, and I think Dr. Dennis last time talked about it, where, of course, the first, if you look at the history of philosophy, especially in this question of knowledge, the positivists first dominated, then now you came up with the post-positivists, which actually is construction, where the debate was, is knowledge constructed, which actually constructivism or interpretivism. So you find that, and I think even when you talk about the deductive and inductive approaches, so you find that at the end of it, you construct, like you find that with the interpretivism, at the end of it, you are now constructing concepts. You are now able to establish firm concepts. After mapping out the different realities, then you come up at the end with the concrete. But when you come up with, of course, the positivists, you look through a process, because already the concepts, you know, the things are there out there. So you already know that there's one reality. So you are just going to confirm whether it's there or not. So that's why the concepts are very clear and explicit. So Michael, thank you so much. Yes, John, again, you're welcome, please.
Thank you, Prof. I just want some clarification on all these things we are discussing about the background. Everyone's talking about background, but as far as I'm concerned, I know that there are two types of background. There are universities which separate this background, like historical, theoretical. Now, there are those ones, like Makerere, which does not separate the background. So when we are linking this, assuming we are dealing with the one which have separated the background, which one, where do we put those things?
Okay, I think that's a question to all of us. Which things are you talking about? Where do we put the concepts or what?
Yes, where do you put this philosophy?
Or how would you position yourself philosophically? I don't know. Okay, members, yes. Can we give senior colleagues, can we help John and fellow students? How do you present now, like especially now? I think Michael Michael, you made some comment. How would you position yourself? Some universities want you to categorically spell out all those aspects. How would you?
Yes, good morning, Michael.
Yes.
This is Dr. Msinguzi.
Yes, yes, please.
Yes, I think the previous speaker is of course, I don't know if he was there when we were presenting about philosophy in the background and in other parts of the study, but still is raising something which is quite important. Universities have different guidelines. Some universities' guidelines are quite explicit and strong on certain things. Others are silent on other things. Even when we talk about, the historical, the contextual, the theoretical, you'll find it is emphasized in some faculties and it is not emphasized in other faculties. Or it is emphasized by some supervisors and other supervisors themselves not aware about the philosophies, and they would rather even a student not ask about them. But he is asking, amidst all that variance as to the different guidelines and different approaches, for this platform, we insist you are doing a doctor of philosophy, and philosophy is key to your study. And we said it can be explicit, it can be implicit. I liked, was it a scholastica? It can be overt, it can be overt or covert. But to answer what he's saying, of course, as members have already presented, philosophy is more to, the clarity of thought. If you are having a statement of the problem, how clear is your problem stated? And if the problem is to be clear, then it means when you are exploring in the background, then it becomes, direct. I'm trying to answer this question and also come in along the way. Yes, to the extent that even if your university does not mention philosophical orientation, we are saying, at this level, have the clarity of thought, have clarity in terms of the direction that you are taking. And you had asked me earlier, when someone talked about, okay, positivism and pragmatism or post-positivism, whatever the name you call it. So how do you then begin reflecting these things? Yeah, that was the question. How do you begin defining these things? So even if you do not have a particular section in the background talking about philosophy, you will expect that many examiners, many reviewers of the works will be interested in seeing, some kind of clarity as to whether the study is quantitative, as to whether the study is qualitative. And for the study to be quantitative, those who belong to the quantitative tradition, the predictors that my brother was talking about, there are already expectations in the minds of the scholars out there. And we are bringing these expectations, to the minds of PhD scholars, that the clarity must be right from the background, because that is even in the introduction itself of chapter 1, thoughts have to be clear right from the beginning. Now, Michael, when you asked me, about positivism, you already partly answered it. I first kept quiet in teaching. Sometimes when you ask a question to the class and nobody seems to answer, sometimes some of us prolong and we are not quick at giving answers until the silence in the audience becomes uncomfortable, and then people are provoked to think, to get out of situation. And I'm happy, the answers that were coming in. As you've said, when you go to the evolution of these thoughts. As I told you, at one moment it was philosophy in the ancient Greece, philosophy, which we are talking about. And that's why, as philosophers, we say philosophy is the foundation of all knowledge, including the natural knowledge. Because when you go back to Plato and Aristotle, they talked about the physical world and non-physical world. And the physical world is the world of the natural scientists. So they already talked about these things. At a later stage, Jesus was born and Muhammad came into play. And we moved away from philosophy. We went mainly into religion. And that was at the dawn of AD and to the medieval period, the 4th, 6th, 7th, 8th centuries after Jesus Christ. But later on, people became uncomfortable, talking about God and the spirit being out there. They said, we need to understand the laws of nature. We need to understand the natural reality and deal with it the way it is. And that was the birth of the natural sciences. And natural sciences is based on quantitative, on predictors, on quantifiable elements. If someone is a builder, if you are going to build a house, they say of this size, of these bricks, you need this number of bricks, you need this number of bags of cement, you need this number of tiles, or this number of, it's about numbers, 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 numbers. That is quantitative approach. And that is the positivism. The natural scientists didn't call it positivism. It is actually the philosophers, who interpreted that kind of thinking and orientation as a positivist, orientation. And this natural science approach is the one that gave birth to Renaissance and to the Industrial Revolution. So that was around 14th, 15th century. And their method had results. They started producing machines, whether it's combine harvesters, whether it is telescopes, whether it is, so their kind of approach was visible. Now, it is later on these other scholars in other fields who were mesmerized by that scientific approach, and they wanted to use that same approach into other fields of study. And that's when we saw the birth of social sciences, whether it is by sociologists, August Comte and Herbert Spencer and those guys, whether it is in the political science of Machiavelli's and Hobbes, who start now talking about what the state should look like, how should the leaders look like, how should the society look like. So the sociologists and social scientists, and they picked this mathematical quantitative approach, and they wanted to use it even in the social sciences. And like physical, like the natural science said, there is one reality out there. Even the sociologists and the social scientists were also saying, if society A in the United States used the following principles, can't we have another society in the Middle East? Can't we have another society in Africa using those same principles so that they attain like the level of development like the other scholars, the other communities have attained? So, and that came with those scholars of management, those scholars of business, the universalization, and having the same standards, standardization. So in other words, social scientists wanted to bring the level of standardization in the study of society similar to the approach that is used by the natural scientists, by the quantitative kind of scholars. And that's why Okoche, yes, as you've mentioned, positivism became a dominant approach even within the social scientists or the social scientists. So, and I like the person who talked about predictors. So if you are positivist oriented, if you say corruption, then you must quantify corruption. You need to know if it is corruption among the government officials, how many government officials, how many are corrupt, in which ways are they corrupt, how much have they corrupted, how has that, how much has it affected the economy. You use that kind of approach that seeks to measure in quantifiable ways the reality that you are dealing with. Now, to the person who was asking, Whether there is a section in the background that asks where to place philosophy or not, it must be explicit and it must be clear in the way you articulate these issues. The moment you say your research is going to be quantitative, we want to see quantifiable predictors in the background when you are explaining the concepts, when you are historicizing these concepts, when you are giving the context. We want to see the statistics. Like when we was presenting with Dr. Hassan, we talked about management communication. If you want to use quantitative approach, you have to give statistics of how many organizations are either communicating or not communicating, and what percentage has research established on the relationship between communication and the efficiency or effectiveness of the organization. So it has to be clear like that. Now, the positivists, yes, as we say, we talk about a single reality out there. And being a single reality does not mean it does not permit plurality. No, we call it a single reality in the sense that if it is a vehicle, there are rules that govern the vehicle. But the vehicle has different parts. It has the engine, it has the tires, it has the lamps, it has what, and those are the predictors. So it doesn't mean that because a positivist has said there is a single reality, therefore you keep rotating on one element. You can subdivide the element, but all these elements constitute the bigger reality. And those are going to be what my brother called the predictors, and the variables. The variables, you have the independent, you have the dependent. You want to deal with the elements of the dependent, and because you can control them, so you are using that approach if you are a positivist. Now, the post-positivists or the pragmatists historically came later by criticizing that kind of approach. And they criticize it in the sense that you cannot study a human being in the same way you study a vehicle. A vehicle is a piece of metal, and it has the fuel, the gauge, the igniters. It will behave in that way. But they said when you are reflecting on human beings today can be happy, tomorrow they can be unhappy. Today they might be interested in something, at a later stage they have lost the interest. So you cannot study human beings, and those were mainly the phenomenologists who are saying, no, you cannot study the human being in the same way you would study a maize seed, in the same way you would study a vehicle, in the same way you would study a house. Because in the human being, there is something immeasurable. There is something you may not measure in a human being, whether it is happiness, whether it is anger, or whether it is excitement. There are those human elements that you may not be able to measure, and yet they are key in the way we are constructing reality. And they are saying what you are calling the same reality, the constructivists or the interpretivists or the constructivists, yes, they are saying what is good for Dr. Michael Okoche may not be good for Dr. Nkurunziza and may not be good for Dr. Msinguzi. And if Msinguzi has three things that are good, one might be good for Okoche and not the other two. And the other two which are not good for Okoche may actually be good for someone else. That's what brings about multiple interpretations. And it is this multiple interpretation that brings in the element of subjectivity. But it also brings in the element of purposefulness. In constructivists, we say we do not have biases. If you want to study corruption, go and study it the way it is. If you want to study the economic growth, go study it in the way it is. So they say there is no bias. But there is no study that is completely out of bias. Because in the first place, you are choosing to study corruption or you are choosing to study economic growth. So even if you are a quantitative scholar, you already have the bias of your interest. But it is limited in the methods and the approaches that you are going to use. A qualitative scholar is more open and saying, okay, I'm going even to allow the findings to inform my perspectives. And there are multiple interpretations, which brings the question of objectivity and subjectivity. You know, sometimes when we're explaining these concepts, sometimes we don't go to the depth. Yes, it does not mean that because qualitative researchers are subjective, therefore the entire study is subjective. No, subjectivity is in determining and allowing your biases. So in quantitative research, we say it is beyond bias. You have your variables, you have your predictors, you have your hypotheses, you have your structured questionnaires. And that is the level of objectivity. Now, to a qualitative scholar, I might say, no, I have my biases. My biases in terms of the subject that I'm looking at, the kind of aspects of the subject that I'm going to look at. I'm even purposively selecting the respondents who are going to give me the data. But when it comes to data collection and data analysis, I must go beyond my subjectivity and allow the level of objectivity to come into my study. So because we say constructivism, I mean positivism is more objective and constructivism is more subjective, it doesn't mean that qualitative researchers are not objective studies or they lack objectivity. No, objectivity and subjectivity is how we interpret reality. But in terms of methodology and conducting the study, all the studies, whether quantitative or qualitative, they must measure to a certain level of objectivity. Even when you have decided to use qualitative methods of data collection and analysis, you must do it using, the standards that are set by the community of scholars, in that field. And I thought I needed to clarify this, that objectivity and subjectivity does not necessarily define the entire study. Objectivity is in the way we determine, what kind of philosophy we are going to adapt. One which is positivism is more objective in the sense that you do not bring in your biases, you do not do what? Constructivists allow their biases to come in, and you can even declare your own biases. But you have to go beyond and subject those biases to some kind of scientific rigor that is, predicted by the kind of approaches that you are using. Now, coming back to the question that I started with, as a scholar, you must be clear from the beginning what kind of philosophical or okay, you can be clear along the way. But by the time you complete your study, by the time you go into the methodology, you should be clear. My study is either in the positivist tradition or in the interpretivist tradition or in the pragmatic tradition. If it is in the positivist tradition, it is quantitative research, but as Elasso has mentioned, there are some positive traditions, especially within the UK, which allow, even positivist studies to have some bit of qualitative research, but you must be clear and you must be deliberate, as Elasso has mentioned it. If quantitative say there must be numerical and subject to statistical studies, but you can also have clarity without the statistical studies of those things, and you place your study within a positivist, but yet you permit some level of qualitative. And that is the beauty of academic research, where there is some level of control by the researcher. But traditionally and predominantly, positivist studies are more oriented towards quantitative studies. So if you are taking that tradition, then the people who are in that tradition will tell you there are certain rules that guide the way you interpret reality, the way you write the background, the way you write the statement of the problem, the way you write the hypothesis, and how you are going to verify them. And if that then is clear, the one who has taken the qualitative will also follow the same. You have, as a researcher, some level of freedom to determine what you want to study and how far you want to study it. But after establishing that, then you will need the objectivity of the qualitative methodological approaches that you are going to employ in your study. So let us not think that it's quantitative studies that are objective and qualitative studies are not objective. No, even in qualitative, although you begin with a biased or purposeful kind of stance, later on, We want to see the objectivity of the methodological approaches. Why are you choosing interviews and not focus group discussions? Why are you choosing life histories and ethnographic kind of other approaches as opposed to one other approach? So there is, you move from the subjective, you go towards the objective. In quantitative, in positivist, we say that, there is objectivity that cuts across. But I'm saying even in quantitative studies, you choose what to study. And the fact that you choose what to study, there is also a level of bias. There is a level of bias. But we should interpret, this objectivity and subjectivity. Some people wrongly think that qualitative studies are not objective. No, qualitative studies are objective to the extent that you are using established methodological approaches and using them following the rules. The subjectivity comes in at the beginning, but later on, you also have to become, objective. I wanted to explain that, Dr. Okoche. So in reflecting in the study, then as we said, it has to cut across. We need to see the elements in the background, the elements in the problem statement, the choice of questions as opposed to hypotheses, and then the choice of sampling, the choice of data collection methods, the selection of data analysis methods in the methodology. Yes, we are talking about the axiology, which is about values, which again, I think Scholar Speaker eloquently talked about. Yeah, these are values that you attach to the knowledge from the beginning, even the way you interpret knowledge. So the axiological orientation of a positivist is slightly different from the axiological orientation. As it comes to the way you describe the problem, you say, as we call the multiple reality, there are also multiple values. So if you are a quantitative scholar, you are saying, no, the reality is already predetermined. And because it is predetermined, it has predetermined axiological outlook. And to a qualitative scholar, we saying, no, reality is constructed. Then you allow a level of which word should I use? You want to allow different value systems, how they reflect on the study. From the axiological point of view, you are saying we do not have a single value. We have different values. And these different values, you are going to subject them to deeper scrutiny when you are conducting the study. And when you are making the conclusions, you will find out the values that are more dominant than others. That is in qualitative. In the quantitative, it is going to be more of predetermined values. And now you are determining statistically the correlations or level of significance or whatever it is. So the values, they are not only in the confidentiality, in the informed consent, values are also in the way you interpret your knowledge and the way you are going to deal with this kind of knowledge. So axiologically then, to a quantitative scholar is already working within predetermined, constructs. To a qualitative scholar has some room of permitting some emerging constructs. So axiologically, the way we explain our reality is different. But axiology also reflects more in methodology in terms of the ethical considerations. Social science research intrudes into the privacy of the people. So you must guarantee their safety. So in terms of informed consent, in terms of confidentiality, in terms of even dealing with emotions, sometimes in qualitative researches, we deal with very, very sensitive subjects. You are talking about domestic violence, you are talking about diseases, how they have affected the social relations, you're talking about marital issues and challenges. You have to be extremely sensitive. You are having a research on exploitation among the workers, either in the Middle East or where. You are interviewing someone who has gone through a lot of psychological stress, and they break down along the way. So as a researcher, are you also going to break down? How are you going to manage, the situation moving forward? And that is the beauty of qualitative. You go into the emotions of your study subjects. That is going to be axiology. So axiology is going to reflect in the nature of the study, but also reflect in the methodology. And definitely it is going to reflect in the study findings. So whether the university has a format on where to place these things at the level of review and analysis, we expect this kind of rigor. I'm sorry, Dr. Okochi, I just came in. It's an open discussion. We are neither here nor there. I think I can stop it there for now and allow others to come in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being able to expound. I think those were the critical, and most times those are the issues which disturb us as scholars through the process. And I think you mentioned something about, and I think also Joseph highlighted the issue, but I wanted to extend that it is also possible because of the experience you go through as studies, like somebody who has been exposed to natural sciences through will not be exposed to qualitative mechanisms of conducting studies. You might find that somebody has gone through a pure natural scientist. And likewise, because also the critical, just like you said historically, that some subject domains or some departments, you'll find them predominantly aligned to positivism, but of course, now there is a break-in. So in such a situation, most times now, when we come at PhD, like at this level, now that's why it's very important that unlike just choosing a philosophical stand, you must justify it. You must demonstrate that that is appropriate by clearly identifying the realities which you are looking for and being able to compare it with the most appropriate philosophy. So you find you are much safer when even people are reviewing your work. It means that you are reflected carefully on the phenomenon, and then which comes out clearly from your background, which comes out clearly from your problem statement, and you are being able to incline it. But the other issue also, which I think, Doctor, which you highlighted, which I think is really very profound, the aspect of subjectivity and objectivity. The interpretivists believe that subjectivity is important because of the multiple realities. The realities which I'm facing, and of course it comes from the strength that there is an observed world and then an experienced world. My experience on what I go through, what I feel, can best be interpreted if you put on my lenses. But now if I just stand outside there and objectively point out, I think he's happy, I could be crying, but I'm happy. So I think that is really very, very, very profound. So and I've sometimes heard in some fora somebody saying that, for us also we can be objective, or meaning now that if you are in the literal sense of objectivity in just English, but yet when you talk about objectivity here, it's about being able to, all of you, look at something externally and prescribe. And that's why sometimes when it comes back, meaning is actually can be ascribed externally for positivism because of that objective reality. While the other one, you talk about subjective reality, what the person goes through in the village is very subjective. When somebody gets 10,000 shillings, the kind of either happiness or disappointment which he gets is basically different. People experience it different. So if you are really to interpret it, I don't use my own judgments so you must put on their lenses. And I think that is really very profound. Any other comment about philosophy? Okay, members, I want us to move into the aspect, and I think we have fairly touched on it. That is the aspect of deduction and inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning. And to a certain extent, we have talked about it. I don't know who can be able to highlight to us what constitutes inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning, and how can you apply it appropriately, and then how they align to the different philosophical orientations. sometimes we find ourselves using these words interchangeably. Inductive meaning deductive, and the other way around. And then now there is this aspect, I think it was Scholastica, which actually highlighted it in the other last weekend. And we tried. So can we discuss about this? What constitutes inductive reason and what constitutes deductive? Yes, Jeremiah.
Thank you very much once again, Prof. I'll begin with deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning means reasoning from particular cases to the general. And the opposite of that is in inductive reasoning, where you begin from the general to particular. Deductive logic, for example, we would say that John is okay. That example is not coming out clearly, but the basic difference between the two is the flow of arguments, where you have premises and your premises form the basis of your conclusion. That is deductive reasoning. I think I would leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Any other person who can help us with this? Can we try to distinguish those concepts, inductive and deductive? And then now when we are conducting our studies, how can we go about the process? Which one is aligned to quantitative? Which one is aligned to qualitative? Or are positive is deductive or inductive? Hello, Jeremiah.
Positivists are aligned to deductive reasoning, and constructivists are aligned to inductive reasoning.
Okay. So it means that when we talk about that a positivist, when you are reading somebody's thesis, or when somebody is presenting his work, you see that flow of reasoning beginning from, and I think that's what even Dr. Dennis was highlighting. Yes, any other comment about the deductive, inductive, and abductive? I think this has been the longest plenary session, but I think we're almost coming to the end. I wanted us to see how logically we can conclude this by us being able eventually to clearly articulate. How do we, yes, Joseph?
Thank you very much, Prof. I may not differ very much from what my colleague Jeremiah said, but maybe to be specific, when we are talking about inductive versus deductive, for example, inductive approach here, or inductive reasoning, we are trying to move from a specific observation and then to the generalizations or to broad terms. But when we are speaking about deductive reasoning, we are coming from generalizations to specific. But you ask another question and saying which one is for positivist and the other one is for reason. Maybe what I can say is when you look through literature, there is usually what they talk about testing of theory and then development of theory. So these two terms, for example, if you are an inductive person, you're beginning with your specific observation, and then you're looking at different patterns, you're trying to recognize the patterns, and then after recognizing your patterns, you can create a general conclusion. But in the deductive sense, you really want to start with existing theory, and then from that theory, after analyzing that theory, we should be able to probably come up with the hypothesis and probably go ahead and collect your data, analyze it, and then you either accept or reject the hypothesis in the end. So because positivists believe in the particular reality, and I tend to think that they go deductive, but I stand to be corrected. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you so much. And actually, yes, Michael.
Thank you so much, Professor. The way I'm looking at inductive and deductive way of articulating issues in research, if we are to differentiate positivism and constructivism, I believe in that case we have to look at the results only. Because like in literature review and the background, I do believe you can use either of them as you bring out the information. So that at the end, as you bring out the results, when you are having a positivist researcher, you start with what is not known, then you come with the specifics later. But when you are a positivist, you start with what is known in the form of your hypothesis, then you come, what you originally knew as a hypothesis, then you come up with results that were not known at the beginning. So I do think that the difference can be at the end when a researcher is presenting results. But in the middle there, background and literature review, I still think that they can be mixed as a researcher brings home his or her points. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you. And since somebody had raised up his hand. Okay. So I think we are getting clear with those concepts, and sometimes you find a positivist will emphasize that which theory informs your study, which are the critical concepts, because you want to really start from a very solid ground. An interpretivist may not mind much about that because they know that the reality is multiple, so eventually you create that you create a theoretical framework at the end, and especially if you deal with the really pure people who go so strongly in interpretivism. Even interact with people like anthropologists who go into the community, begin interacting, we don't know even their language, and eventually learn the language, then because you want to get into the realities those people are living, then at the end you come up with a clear mindset how the community is. But you know, as a positivist who use deductive reasoning, you begin from very established foundation, then you go generating knowledge like that. So I think those are very critical thoughts, and I must thank everyone who has been able to contribute. Yes, Mohammed? Mohammed, you can unmute them. Mohammed Kasada.
Yes, bro. Hello.
Yes, please.
Okay, I wanted to talk about something of abductive reasoning, which basically, to me, you're beginning from a something abductive. It is basically about your extension. Maybe, for example, if you're starting with something which is not so complete, maybe the observations are not so complete, then you want to proceed to find out what could be the likely explanations from a group of observations from people. And you would find out that this one arises from a new school of thought that thinks that abductive, that inductive and then deductive may not be so enough, and then they come up with the abductive reasoning. But as earlier, you would also find out that we say that deductive basically deals with the positivistic. It's about the theory testing, and then when we talk about inductive, then we're dealing with the theory building, and then with the adaptive, you also find out that we are beginning from the general rule, and we're trying to find out what are the specific conclusions about a given aspect. Whereas the other one is you're dealing with, you're moving from specific, and that's the inductive part of it. And we want to give what could be the overview general conclusion about the given aspect that we're trying to study. Prof, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, like I was saying, that I must thank all of us for the participation, especially Dr. Dennis Musinguzi. Thank you so much for the now this is the fourth week. The thoughts you presented in the platform really brought a lot of new insights and helping us to go extend our horizons. We're coming towards the end, and I will be allowing, I think, peace, but I want to just bring up us to a particular focus. So the foundational presentation really brought us very far, where most of us now can clearly be able to distinguish some of the concepts, some of the words we have never even heard of, we have been able to hear. We are now able to critically distinguish the different concepts, which and I believe this will really facilitate us to go through the process. So as we come towards the end, I think I'm going to invite Dr. Gideon. Dr. Gideon will be able to help us to make the closing remarks. Then after Dr. Gideon, PC will be able to present to highlight their issues, but Dr. Gideon, are you on? Dr. Gideon. Dr. Gideon.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, maybe Dr. Goretti. Dr. Goretti. Okay, peace. You make your remarks, then yes.
Thank you so much, Professor. I would like you to help me. In our study, all of us are talking pragmatism, mixed method, but our mixed method begins by collecting quantitative study. Then we use qualitative study to validate the data that we've done quantitatively. But could there be a possibility of me going inductively? I first go inductively, then at the end, I use quantitative study to validate the entire study. But when I have begun with deductive study, I'm sorry, inductive study, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I think in the interest of time, all those approaches are there. Most times, most scholars argue that if you look at people like Tasha Corey, they talk about it, and Tedley. They say that there could be a situation like you are not clear about the clarity of concepts is not there. So you begin with exploration. So therefore, you are beginning from a process of constructivism or interpretivism. So you begin from that perspective. Then when you have now, because of the few interviews you have conducted or the focus group, you are able to establish now the critical concepts. Then on the basis of that, then now you develop a questionnaire, which now you administer to a majority of the respondents. But also the other way, there are scholars still, or the same scholars argue that there are instances whereby the general issues from quantitative studies, you can't understand why. Yes, we know that this thing is predominant, but we can't really explain. So then now you go into the qualitative perspective to explain some of the divergences. Like if you take interest on some of the issues, you'll be able to know why. Because sometimes, yes, the majority could be appreciating something, but there is some sense in some of the minority. There is that also. But also there are scholars who ultimately believe that you can conduct a study from positivism perspective, quantitative study, and then confirm those findings by conducting a few interviews, and then you see whether it will, and vice versa. So those are the basic mindset, but it is possible. And of course, that's why pragmatism is there. But maybe as I conclude, most times all these approaches have controversies, especially as PhD. You'll meet examiners who have different perspectives. So like again, in my university, you find that they would actually, even at the end of your philosophical orientation, you even would be encouraged to put the probable arguments against your position. Like, of course, somebody who begins his study inductively will have some disagreements why you started your study deductively. So, but you try to put arguments, trying to support the choice of your orientation. Because if you truly believe that, beginning from a quantitative perspective or in the process of pragmatism, because pragmatism, you are mixing the two approaches. Beginning from a positive perspective, you must be able to justify why are you starting and what are you seeking, why that sequence. And I think that's what I could highlight. I don't know, but I think.
Dr. Okoche, can I add something small?
Please, yes.
There is a colleague, a former colleague. He went to a different university, but he's studying at our university. And he approached me and said, Dr. Musinguzi, I'm lost and I'm going to, lose my PhD at the last minute. And I asked him, what is the problem? He said, I have two supervisors. One is qualitative, the other one is quantitative. Now, the one of quantitative insisted that I have to include the quantitative things. And the one of qualitative was saying, no, the qualitative enough. Qualitative is enough to address this. Now, this disagreement, unfortunately, along the way, is affecting the quality of the students' research. And now he was telling me, okay, can I say that I generated some statistics, but I interpreted them qualitatively? And which is the question that was it Scholastica or who he said we are saying we are pragmatists, but we are either beginning with statistics but interpreting them qualitatively. I think this is the clarity that we need right from the beginning. The moment you say you are quantitative, then we need quantitative methods of data analysis and interpretation. The moment you say you are qualitative, we are expecting qualitative methods of data analysis and interpretation. Now, when you say you are mixed, you know, something that we have discussed in detail, then the question will be, if you are a pragmatist, Scholastica or Tracy or whoever, if you are a pragmatist, then the question will be, what of your data is quantitative, what of your data is qualitative? How much is quantitative, how much is qualitative, and how are you going to triangulate the two? The moment you go the pragmatism, then it means you cannot avoid triangulation. And this comes to, yes, what we talked about last week, Professor Okoche. I'm happy, yes, last week you explained, you know, in detail, the abduction. We have not talked about it, which I think is the direction of the question that is talking, that she is raising. My mind was on deductive and inductive, and I'm happy that you brought about, you know, the abduction, which comes to address the limits of either quantitative or qualitative. But to answer the question of that person directly, if you have chosen to become pragmatic and use mixed method, then you are not shying away from part of your data being quantitative and part of your data being qualitative, and triangulating the two. If you want to use a statistical data set, which you have either generated by yourself or that is existing out there, and then you want to interpret it qualitatively, that must be reflected in your methodology. Now, if you are going to generate a quantitative data set and analyze it quantitatively and get some, you know, indicators or predictors or whatever, the conclusions, whether there is relevancy, whether there is a relationship or significance, but you want to subject that later to qualitative research, then it means you are having that mixed approach, but you are giving the limitations that my final conclusions will be based on how qualitative interacts with the quantitative. If you are going to generate this data yourself using hypotheses and maybe questions, and you want to you want to do the complete data analysis and establish either significance or relationship, but you are not satisfied with the quantitative and you want to pick that and also relate it with qualitative, then you are moving from, yes, you have the quantitative data set which you have analyzed quantitatively, you have a data set of qualitative which you've analyzed qualitatively, now you are trying to triangulate them. That is pragmatism. But that is different from when there is already an existing statistical data set, like, for example, from the National Bureau of Standards or UBOS, and there is already an existing research that you want to subject to qualitative kind of analysis. If that is the case, then your study is going to remain qualitative. It is not going to be mixed method, because the data set that you are using, it's already collected and analyzed and interpreted. You are adding nothing to the quantitative interpretation. You are only subjecting the quantitative aspects to, qualitative kind of aspect. And that's why I was saying presence of statistics alone does not mean that your study is quantitative. It is only quantitative if you've generated quantitative data and you've analyzed it using quantitative approaches and you've come to certain forms of either conclusions or positions. If you've done that, then you have a mixed research. If you pick a data set from the Bank of Uganda and it is giving you the variables, and you are going to use these variables to interrogate them qualitatively, then you have to be cautious. That does not necessarily make you a research pragmatist in the real philosophical orientation of pragmatism. So as you are grappling with those questions, what kind of data sets are you using? How have you generated them? What kind of contribution have you put there as a researcher? I can be a qualitative person, but studying inflation. And I'm looking at the reports of Bank of Uganda in the last 6 years and how inflation and the aspects of inflation have, reflected quantitatively. But I'm a qualitative researcher. And I am picking, the dominant issues within the inflation gaps and whatever, but I want to do in-depth interviews. I want even to have case histories with the governor, Bank of Uganda, or even the former governor to find out how have these things played out from a qualitative point of view. That may not necessarily make me a mixed method, kind of researcher, because I'm already having some statistics. Yes, it is possible that you can say, I'm looking at the 5 reports, but looking at the 5 reports, I'm doing some kind of analysis to pick up the dominant aspects that are emerging from these researches, and I'm going to use a statistical tool to help me explicate some of these things. Once you do that, then you are saying, okay, I am a positivist because I have a quantitative data set of different years. I want to first collect it. Then after collecting it, get the dominant positions using a quantitative tool, then subject that to the qualitative. Then there you can say, I am a pragmatist kind of approach. So we have to be a little cautious. And from Professor Okoche's explanation last week, yes, and that is the abductive, the approach, where you are going beyond the limits of quantitative and qualitative, but you are, intelligently using different data sets to help you in doing the analysis. But you have to make clear decisions and procedures of data analysis. Back to you, Dr. Okoche.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think to add to that, there is an article I came across which talks about the dangers of mixed methods. And mostly the emphasis that mixing paradigms, 2 opposing paradigms. So it means that when you are mixing methods, you have to be careful. Okay, that's what the major story behind, the major argument behind the article. That when you are coming from 2 opposing directions, if you don't meet in the middle, then you have to intelligently be able to explain those results. But also, if you are not careful, these 2 contradicting paradigms can put your whole study into a mess. So that's why the aspect, and I think I liked what Scholastica basically said, in it she actually highlighted that you must be able to capture the quantitative part of the study must strongly be pursuing the single realities. So, and then, if you can begin from that perspective, you find that you'll be safer. But if you are not, you might find yourself in that dilemma that you find 2 different findings, especially when you are trying to validate this with the other. So now, supposing the quantitative is saying this, then the qualitative is saying actually it disapproves all what you found. What will be the position? But that article tries to put it that you must be careful in the process of mixing, especially those kind of studies. So, but I think you can use it. But again, I really, like even Dr. Dennis says, you must be able to have 2 data sets, but also which are informed by the realities. And again, if you really can be able to identify these realities and then appropriately use the approaches properly, which becomes abduction by deductively and inductively conducting your studies. Like I think the plenary, this I think has been the longest from 4 up to 6. So I think we should come to the close of this session, and I requested Dr. Gideon. Dr. Gideon, are you on? Dr. Gideon. Professor James. Professor James. Wow. Okay, I think we need to wrap up this session. Like I said that we had planned to have breakout session. I see we want to continue the plenary but I think, Stephen, can we, in the interest of time, just, I don't know, maybe, is it a burning one? Because I see we might keep on as we're about to close again, some comment. Yes, Dennis, Stephen.
It's just my analysis as an individual. I think a philosophical background, philosophy, according to me, from the time of problem identification up to the end, at the time of designing even instruments, even coming up with results, I have seen philosophy plays a very good, a big part. At the beginning, I thought it is just a section which is included in the research, but according to me, I have tried to look at all the parts throughout the whole research. At every part, philosophy is there and is applicable. So to me, I may not specify it in a certain area, but all the things appear in every section, in every chapter. That's my input and my observation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your insights. Let us now go to the close.
Professor Okocha, I'm present.
Yeah, Prof. So I wanted you to make closing remarks. You know, this has been a very serious labor. Again, Dr. Dennis, we really appreciate you, Dr. Dennis. All this has really brought us to a point of clarity. So I want Professor James to make closing remarks.
Professor Okoche, about the closing prayer, am I including it in the remarks, or somebody else will give the prayer?
You can do both. You can do both.
All right.
Excuse me, I'm seeing Dr. Ahmad Walgeme's mic on. I don't know, Doctor. Okay.
Sorry for that.
Okay. I thought there was some. Okay, yes, please. Professor, please, you can go ahead.
Well, I think this discussion on philosophy in the background has been inspiring and quite thrilling for most of us. And I thank whoever came up with this topic for discussion in this on this forum. Those who have contributed, Mr. Musunguzi, Dr. Musunguzi, thank you very much for spearheading this discussion and taking us all this far. Of course, I have to thank those who created this platform, Professor Ntai, associates who have been helping him in all this, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Elasu. I don't think I can mention everybody. Professor Okoche, thank you very much for being around all the time. All these other senior colleagues, and of course, without the PhD students, then we wouldn't have this platform. So thank you very much for coming on globally, nationally, and regionally. Whoever is participating and is on call, thank you very much. I think we are not coming totally to the end of this philosophy in the background because, for instance, we've been talking about the aspects of positivism, post-positivism, issues of pragmatism. But we also have the issue that has been around. Should we go pragmatic with pragmatism or critical realism, which is, and should we carry forward? There are those debates, and I thought that philosophy should still continue, and we look at whether we should take on pragmatism or critical realism, and what's the difference, and what are the challenges of either. So that's another thought we need to discuss maybe on later platforms. Members, I thank you for all the contributions you've made. And I'm sure students have learned a lot, and even we senior scholars, we keep getting new knowledge that is coming on board, and I was a bit excited when I heard of the abductive reasoning, and I was trying to find out exactly what is this. The simple definition I found was actually related to what somebody was trying to explain, that at times you find you don't have concrete information about the phenomenon, and you need to draw a conclusion. And somebody was saying, if, for instance, Professor Koche is a friend of Dr. Ahmed, and I'm a friend of Dr. Ahmed, then Professor Koche is my friend. And at school, I used to study French, and there was a French saying that les amis de mes amis sont mes amis, that the friends of my friends are my friends. So I looked at that reasoning, and many times we find ourselves in situations coming up with our own hypothesis. So we need to look further into that kind of reasoning. Thank you very much for those who contributed and helping us to keep learning. Those are the few remarks I can make, maybe with the entering prayer. I thank the Almighty for having guided us all through these discussions, for keeping us awake and learning more and more, and yearning for more knowledge. And that knowledge is always changing. Somebody was saying sometime back, knowledge was changing every century, then it was changing every decade, and today knowledge is changing every 6 months. So we must keep abreast with these changes. Thank you very much for this platform. God, we glorify you for all this, and we pray that you guide us all through that we are discussing, and take us through the whole day and other days to come, and that we meet next Sunday morning for other discussions. Please keep us alive and together. Through you, I've prayed. Thank you very much, members. Amen.
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 Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are so grateful.
Thank you, lovely Sandy. For those who
Same.
are planning to go to sleep, can we now go to church?
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you.